Despite not living up anywhere near to the insanely colossal hype it generated, I've still somehow racked up over 33 hours of No Man's Sky, and most of them have been rather enjoyable. The game as a whole could be a fair bit better however, so I've come up with 10 improvements that I feel would make the game a more engaging and enjoyable experience, for me personally. Once Hello Games have fixed the bugs and other issues of course. So without further ado, here's No Man's Sky and 10 ways I'd make it better, or TWIMIB for short. No Man's Sky's stifling inventory system has been a source of immense frustration for many players. It's extremely limited at the beginning of the game and constantly forces you to make trade-offs between carrying capacity and suit upgrades. One slot in your exosuit can hold up to 250 units of gold, platinum, carbon, etc, while a single slot in your ship's inventory can hold up to 500 units. When it comes to unique items and crafting materials however, you're limited to only one of each per slot. Whether it's a sheet of metal, a packet of geknip, a necklace of teeth or a pearl the size of a medicine ball. That's one entire slot, which can otherwise hold several tons of raw ores and isotopes, taken up entirely by one solitary item. Which makes about as much sense as allocating an entire warehouse storage bay to a solitary packet of crisps. So why not allow some of the more common items like crafting materials to stack in individual slots? Technically you already can, but the process involves crafting an expensive upgrade and then disassembling it again, and frankly that's just too much of a pain in the arse for something so simple. A significant amount of frustration with No Man's Sky's inventory would be alleviated with this one simple change, and could probably be implemented with a patch smaller than Windows Calculator.exe. It could even be scaled, so super rare items like the game's elusive Atlas stones still take up one whole slot, while green items can stack up to 3 per slot and crafting materials stack up to 5 per slot. You could argue letting rare items stack would only make it easier for players to loot all those planets covered in sac venom and vortex cubes you can discover. Except those same players are still going to do that anyway. Now I don't mean the game itself, it does that for plenty of people already. I'm talking about being able to crash my ship, because right now a planet's surface and geographical features like mountains and hills all have this magical exclusion zone around them that stops you so much as getting within spitting distance. So you can forget recreating those dramatic canyon dogfights seen in some of the early trailers, along with many other things seen in the early trailers. Strangely however, this magical exclusion zone doesn't extend to asteroids in space, which you can smash your ship into again and again to your heart's content or until you explode. So how did we even crash land on our starting planet in the first place? Come on Hello Games, take off the training wheels and let us soar with all the freedom and associated risks of the mythical Icarus. So what if some players crash land? It wouldn't be the first time, and fixing it again wouldn't feel like so much of a chore if you also let us stack those bloody carite plates, would it? Like many people, I had some frame rate issues with No Man's Sky, yet I don't recall ever having any inside the game's space stations. The likely reason being that apart from some NPC ships flying in and out, there's absolutely bugger all in them besides this desk and a galactic trade terminal. Oh, and a handful of small, unimpressive empty locked rooms you can only get into if A, you followed the Atlas storyline like a good little puppet, or B, your boy Polo here hooked you up with the plans to make your own.
Lilu Dallas Multipass.
Is that really all there is inside these gigantic feats of stellar engineering? Where are the cargo holds, command rooms and giant docking bays for freighters? Where are the space bars full of assorted scum and villainy? And no, hardcore No Man's Sky apologist, this tiny room is not a bar. It's a glorified reception desk at best. Having some non-interactive NPCs milling about would go a long way to making stations seem more populated. Make them all billboard sprites and put them behind interior windows if you don't want players cheesing that number of aliens met milestone. Just make us feel like we've docked with a functional, populated galactic trading hub and not the Autobot mausoleum from that one episode of Transformers.
Do we have to go inside?
Nothing in there can hurt us, Daniel.
No Man's Sky's Galactic Map is genuinely awe-inspiring and beautiful. A cosmic smorgasbord of stars that can literally take you over 45 minutes to reach the edge of, if you have the time and patience to zoom out that far for that long, which I don't. I leave that to people like Super Bunny Hop here. As vast and impressive as it is however, trying to find individual star systems you've passed through on your vast cosmic journey ever again is like trying to find a certain grain of sand in a desert. You can mark any star system on the galactic map with a blue waypoint marker, but you can't mark the system you're in until you've moved on to another one, and the game only gives you a maximum of 3 waypoints. So it'd be great to have an extra tab at the top of the screen here that highlights each star system we visited and the paths between them. The game already keeps track of systems we've discovered on this list here and correlates them with their position on the galactic map. As well as allowing players to more easily revisit some of their favourite places, it would give them an important feeling of progression while at the same time reinforcing how vast the galaxy is. I know the objective of No Man's Sky is to push ever onwards. The game takes any opportunity to nag you about that, but what's the point in pushing onwards without also remembering where you came from? I mean, that's what it's all about, right? The journey rather than the destination? On the subject of maps, while No Man's Sky lets you rename individual locations you've discovered on planets, as well as the planets themselves, your chance of finding a particular settlement ever again is rather unlikely, unless you spend hours memorising each planet like the back of your hand. And that can be a pain if, say, you found a terminal that buys a certain resource or item for crazy money, or somewhere with an amazing view of the surrounding landscape and want to go back there. So why not let us craft a map unit for our multi-tool to help us keep track of the locations we've already discovered on a particular planet? Not a boring flat map, of course, no, make it a globe. It could look a bit like this quick and dirty proof of concept I cooked up in Photoshop. It would only show locations like landing pads, ruins and transmission towers, while any location marked on your map by a beacon but not yet visited could appear translucent until you physically reach them. Not only would a map like this be incredibly useful for players, it would encourage them to rename settlements they discover to something more memorable, and also be a cool visual indicator of how much of a particular planet they've explored. It doesn't have to be mandatory either. It could be a mod you put on your multi-tool after you've found the blueprints for it, giving players who want one something to strive for, while letting players who don't want one, for whatever mad reason, carry on as usual. Speaking of planets, let us add a little note about each one on this screen for other travellers who visit, like, this planet has lots of gold, for example, or every creature here will try and murder you. For a force that allegedly traverses the galaxy unopposed and imposes their will upon every sentient being they encounter, Sentinels are more of a nuisance than any sort of real threat. If you cause some trouble planetside, a trio of drones will usually arrive to take potshots at you, kill them all, which is pretty easy, and, well, that's it, pretty much. Although if you pick up a valuable object like a sac venom or albumin pearl, the wanted level starts at 3 and you'll have one of these robot dogs with lasers to deal with too. However, if you take too long to destroy the drones, the wanted level goes up a notch, with a Sentinel Walker appearing when it hits 5. If you then kill every Sentinel, they completely leave you alone for the duration of your stay on that planet. It works similarly in space. If you plunder enough freighters, then Sentinel strike drones will appear to fight you, and sticking around to cause more trouble ups the wanted level. When it hits 5, one of these huge Sentinel battle cruisers will appear, dispensing waves of Sentinel strike drones and shooting you with its beam turrets. If you destroy all those turrets, however, the cruiser simply disappears, dropping your wanted level back down to 1. All of which is a massive cop-out for an ancient race of machines whose only reason for existing is to stop people like you being a menace. If you choose to wage a one-person war against them, they should react in kind, sending larger vessels and robots in greater numbers until you're dead, you run away and hide with your tail between your legs, or you win. Or something within several 100,000 light years of something else that slightly resembles winning if you look at it from a certain angle. In short, Sentinels need to be meaner and more terrifying. Don't let them stop attacking you until you stop posing a threat at lower wanted levels or manage to escape if you're at a higher wanted level. On planets, give us huge boss Sentinels, perhaps procedurally generated, that only appear if you destroy enough waves of walkers. Maybe defeating these challenging Master Control Sentinels could give you a unique technology upgrade, dramatically change the planet's climate somehow, or disable every Sentinel on that planet forever, albeit only for you. Similarly, in space, more than one Sentinel cruiser could appear at a time, and defeating enough waves of them, or something another size larger, will summon a, perhaps procedurally generated, Sentinel flagship as big as a Super Star Destroyer. Then, if you somehow clear every planet in a system of Sentinel bosses while also destroying the big bad Sentinel flagship, well, they might decide the only way to save that system is to destroy it. Unless some cosmic menace stops them, of course. Back to the topic of planets again, every planetary hazard has exactly the same effect. Your hazard protection meter goes down at a varying rate, and when it runs out, you start taking damage. This currently means severe rainstorm conditions on a planet have exactly the same effect as extreme levels of radiation or tremendous sub-zero temperatures. Why can't each planetary hazard type have a different debuff effect that you can only mitigate with the appropriate environmental shielding? A freezing world could make you move slower, radiation could damage exosuit systems like your jetpack or heaven help you your life support, and extremely hot worlds could reduce your stamina for sprinting. It needn't be all bad though. A cold world might make your mining laser take much longer to overheat, a radioactive world could have much more plutonium and other isotopes to harvest, and a rainy planet could make those zinc and platinum flowers give you more of those resources. Speaking of which, you know what grinds my gears, chaps my arse and exacerbates my allergies? These sodding yellow flowers being the only source of zinc in the entire No Man's Sky universe. At least with platinum you can find a bunch of the stuff in these big silo things, but zinc? Nope. The only way to get that is to gamble through the fields with the little space flower basket, literally stopping to smell the flowers and scrape handfuls of heavy metals from their petals. Would it really break the game to have zinc and platinum crystals we can harvest like the ones for titanium, gold, emerald and chrysanite? Actually, why does it have to be crystals? We scan plants and rocks into the planetary database the same as animals, but they all usually give the same stuff. If it looks like a rock or a big stone bowl, it'll give you iron, and if it looks like a plant, it'll give you carbon. Why must every source of carbon be a plant, fungus or animal? Meaning even completely dead worlds still have mushrooms growing on them. Do you know what other forms carbon can come in? This one. And also this one. It can't be that hard to slip something like if planet equals lifeless, flora equals 0 and fauna equals 0, then carbon equals rocks and zinc equals crystals into the procedural generation algorithm. That way Hello Games could make their dead worlds truly look completely lifeless while still giving players enough carbon and zinc to charge their hyperdrive, if necessary. Putting zinc and other materials in different forms would also add some variety to more vibrant worlds. Players might actually have a reason to explore caves too if some materials in certain forms could only be found underground. Speaking of underground, one of the first things I did in No Man's Sky was find the nearest cave and explore it. Little did I realise however that by doing so, I immediately saw everything there ever was to see underground on every planet I'd ever visit. So why not expand the scope of planetary exploration downwards with things like huge subterranean caverns, unique underground creatures, pools of steaming lava or ancient buried alien ruins? For example, have you ever seen a picture of Cueva de los Cristales in Mexico? Here's one if you haven't. Now, imagine exploring underground in No Man's Sky and stumbling on something like that. Or a cavern with a monolith in it surrounded by horrific looking skittering creatures you haven't seen on the surface. Don't forget to scan them by the way. Underground areas could even have their own unique climates different from topside. A planet that's barren on the surface might be teeming with life below it, while a cold, icy world could have huge lakes of magma underground where the majority of the planet's creatures can be found. Wouldn't that be awesome? Finally, while space combat in No Man's Sky could be a hell of a lot better in general, letting players add a missile launcher to their ship would be a good step in that direction. Right now, the only ship weapons available are a pulse cannon and a glorified mining laser, and the pulse cannon is easily the better of the two. A missile launcher on the other hand would add an extra dimension to combat, especially if enemy ships could use them too, and make the entire experience much less of an exercise in moving backwards while holding down the firing button. You need to have stacks of missiles in your inventory of course, which would be craftable, and players could find blueprints for new missile types like slow moving bombs that can destroy freighters and capital ships. To stop it being too overpowered in the hands of players or NPCs, there could also be automatic electronic countermeasure systems you can find the plans for and build. It would activate automatically whenever a missile locks onto you, so you won't have to charge it manually like the shields, but each use would consume one of those otherwise useless power cells nobody ever builds in your ship's inventory. You could even have it so your ship's shields automatically uses them to recharge whenever they run dry, making players strike the right balance between resilience and firepower. And that's it for No Man's Sky and the 10 ways I'd make it better. There are other improvements that could be made to the game of course, and the vanilla experience is a solid foundation to build upon, but I decided to keep it to 10. If there are improvements to the game you'd personally like to see that I didn't cover here, please do share them in the comments below. In the meantime, thank you for watching, let me know what you thought of it by hitting the like or dislike button, and I'll see you beautiful misfits next time.